Thank you guys all for coming today. I really do appreciate it. I'm happy that there's more than just one person in the room. It's always nerve-wracking because we don't know how many people are going to register. So I'm very appreciative to see all of you guys here today. By a show of hands, who in this room is a wedding photographer right now, full-time? Okay, how many in here are part-time wedding photographers or have another job that they're doing this and they want to become a full-time? Okay, cool, awesome. And then how many people in here are not wedding photographers or they never shot a wedding and they're learning? Awesome, thank you for coming, I appreciate it. Okay, so guys, I'm a Los Angeles based wedding photographer. I've been doing this for just under 5 years, or sorry, just turned 5 years in April. And I've kind of progressed in my business pretty quickly. I've developed a style in my market that originally was pretty unique, and because at the time when I started in wedding photography, I had another job, I could really focus on doing what I love to do, and that helped to separate me from the amount of competitors that we have in the LA marketplace. As you guys can imagine, especially for those of you who are based here in New York, I am also in a very competitive marketplace. There's a lot of wedding photographers. Some of them out there are doing weddings for free. Some of them are $500. Some of them are really good wedding photographers and charging very little for their services, right? So when you're in a market like that, having to stand out and offer your clients something unique and different is paramount to being successful. Wouldn't you guys agree? Cool, awesome. Now, for those of you guys in this room, what are some of the challenges that you guys face on a wedding day? I always like to ask this question so that I can kind of tailor our presentation a little bit for you directly.
I find as many years as I've done it, I never know what I'm walking into.
Okay.
But my nerves are still, because even though I know what I'm doing, you never know what, there's so many factors going on that you got to kind of keep a blank mind. It's hard to do that.
Awesome, and you know what? That's actually a good thing, right? And the reason for that is because it keeps you on edge. When I was a police officer, and I will refer back to this quite a bit because it was part of my start as a photographer. There was a saying that our drill instructor used, and it was complacency kills, right? And of course, in wedding photography, it probably won't kill you, right? But it's obviously if you're complacent, it's going to hurt your business because you're never going to be able to make sure you're staying above the pack, right? Like I said before, in a crowded marketplace, when there's a lot of people who are nipping at your heels, if you get to the top of that market, and I'm not saying that that's something that I've done, right? But when you get to the top of your market, then there's going to be a lot of people who are trying to catch up to you. They're going to be hungrier than you, and you have to make sure 100% of the time that you have that in the back of your head so that you can go ahead and stay above and ahead of the pack. What are some other challenges that you guys have faced?
Always scheduling with me. I like to do my portraits.
Okay.
I like to try to schedule at least an hour for the portraits, and then the makeup is late, and then the people don't arrive on time, and then the church closes earlier than they said it was going to. And
so the timeline doesn't go according to plan, right?
You end up, schedule an hour and you have 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do, because no matter what you do, you can plan, and I even tell my clients this all the time. I say you can have a amazing timeline, it could be rock solid, you could follow all of our recommendations and then give us even extra time, and your wedding's still gonna end up running late, because there's always something that's unexpected, right? That's part of what we do, is dealing with the unexpected over and over and over again, right? And having to deal with these challenges in real time and make decisions on the actual wedding day. I'm gonna get into some more of your challenges in a couple of minutes, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we deal with them as well too. Before I get started, I want to give a huge thank you to Canon for having me here today. I'm a big user of their products. I always have been. I started in photography with the Canon Rebel, and I still use today the Canon 5D Mark IV. Absolutely love that, and also their lighting equipment as well too, which again we'll talk about in just a little bit. So thank you, Canon, for having me here. That being said, guys, today light is light. I want you guys to understand that. I want you guys to understand you can create amazing pictures with whatever you guys have, right? So I'm not here, and I hate when photographers do this. They get up on stage and they are just there hawking a product, right? I want you guys to understand that whatever you guys are working with, you can make beautiful pictures. This is just what I use in my particular workflow, and it works really well for me, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go over our course outline a little bit here, and I'll give you guys a little bit of an expectation of what you'll learn in the next couple of hours with me. First thing is understanding how to create, or how creating impactful images is going to affect your business. This is important, and I talked about this a few minutes ago in my intro. If you guys are creating images that are unique, different, and beautiful, they're gonna make clients stop and say, wow, right? So we'll get into that in a little bit. Understanding the elements of creating an impactful image, right? And I'm not talking from a competition perspective, because if you guys are in print comp, if you're working in the different competitions, you guys will know that the first element of a award-winning image is impact, right? But I'm talking more from a business perspective and also how it affects your clientele, all right? I'm going to talk to you guys about making the use of your surroundings. Okay, remember a second ago how I talked about weddings are all about overcoming challenges, right? How often have you guys been in the worst possible situation and you're still expected to create something? Often, right? If you're a wedding photographer, the first wedding you shot, you're probably in that situation, okay? And it happens to me still every single weekend. So I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about how we deal with those situations, how we light things on the go, because as much as I would love to, obviously I can't bring studio lights with me to every scenario that I'm gonna be in, right? We have to be able to be mobile and be fast. Otherwise, we're not engaging with our clients, and that's the most important thing. Sure, we could bring a 3-foot softbox, we could bring strip boxes and set up these dynamic lighting setups, but if you're not connecting with your clients, that affects their overall experience. And that's going to affect their perception of your photos too, when it's all said and done, all right? We're going to talk a little bit about understanding light and how to shape it to your subjects. We use a lot of, light is the key foundation to how we create our pictures, right? So I'm going to show you guys how to use light in relation to your subjects, how to shape them the best, make sure that they are the most impactful part of the photograph, especially in our style where in a lot of cases the subjects are a little bit smaller in frame. And that's not how we shoot all the time, but it is how we shoot to sell large prints to clients, right? So I want you guys to understand that you have to use light to direct the viewer's attention to your subjects. And then lastly, we're going to talk about creating dramatic environmental portraits using small lights, right? This is key because I'm finding myself more and more these days using smaller lights than the larger lights. And the reasoning for that is just because I don't want to say that I'm getting old and tired because I'm shooting a lot of weddings, right? It's more because I just need to stay mobile, right? I want lights that can fit inside my bag. I want lights that can fit inside my roller bag and that I could get in and out of a situation quickly. I'm trying to carry less equipment on a wedding day, as I'm sure most of you guys are too, okay? Who feels that they have to carry too much gear around to a wedding? How do you guys do it in New York here, right? To take on the subway, or do you guys drive? It's tough. Okay, give me a second here. I wanted to talk about this image. I added this image to my presentation 30 seconds ago. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because it is the foundation of my background in photography, right? The reason I started in photography, and I've never talked about this before, was I told you guys in the beginning I was a police officer, right? A mentor of mine, my brother-in-law, he was a police officer as well. About a year into my career, he was killed in a pursuit trying to chase some suspects who had stolen a car, right? He left behind my sister, his wife, and also my niece and nephew. And they were 2 years old and 9 months old at the time, right? So because they didn't have, their father anymore, I wanted to spend more time with them. I ended up going out to see them quite often that first year after this happened. I bought my camera to take pictures of them. The first camera that I started with was a Canon Rebel. It was a T2i, and I still love that camera today. Unfortunately, I sold it. I wish I would have kept it. How many of you guys sold your first camera? Nobody in here? I'm the only person? God, I feel really stupid right now. Yeah, except for you, man. You're there with me. Yeah, it's all good. I took this image right here, and this image, even today, serves as a foundation for my philosophy in wedding photography, right? And that is storytelling through your imagery. Okay, I didn't realize at the time what I was doing. I didn't know anything. The camera here was on, I believe, P mode or aperture priority, right? They take great pictures now without having to dial in all the settings. They're pretty smart like that. But what I was doing here is I'm sitting here and I'm watching this moment, right? This is a naturally unfolding moment, a photojournalistic moment. In weddings today, these particular moments happen all of the time, but you guys might not be so connected to them because it's not your life, right? It's not your story, okay? This image means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family because this is fresh. This happened, this photo was taken maybe 3 or 4 months after that event had happened, right? So these images that you guys take for people in weddings will be impactful to their lives down the line when these people that are in the photographs are no longer here. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind when you guys are out there shooting. So talking real quick about my background, I left my law enforcement career full-time in 2014 to pursue wedding photography. Everybody asked why I left a career with a pension and health benefits and all of that stuff. And I did it because I was really passionate about doing this. And truthfully, they kind of forced my hand a little bit. The police department came up to me one day and they said, I had weekends off at the time, right, to shoot weddings. They said, hey, starting next month, you don't have weekends off anymore. I had 10 weddings booked in that October, okay? So I had to leave because I obviously couldn't couldn't miss those weddings to be a police officer. So I had to leave the career at that time. I was scared. Like many of you guys who are thinking about making that jump to full time. I know we talked a second ago about making that jump to full time, but it's the second that you guys leave your full time career, you're going to have 100% of time to dedicate to your photography. And if your foundations are square and you're passionate about it, you guys will succeed. Trust me when I tell you that. I promise you. Okay, just make sure you guys have the foundation before you make that leap. All right. One thing I tell a lot of the people that we're teaching is that police officer, police work, that's a hard job, but all you guys here can do it, because I'd rather deal with criminals and crazy brides all the time, right? You guys feel me on that? Right? I'm just kidding. We only have a small portion of crazy brides. So I'm talking real quick about our progression in business, okay? I've only been in business for 5 years, essentially, okay? 2012 was our first year, and we did 7 weddings. Now today we have 3 brands, 5 associate photographers, and we do 10 or so destination weddings per year. If you guys are interested in shooting destination weddings, that's another topic we could talk about on a different day. But I want you guys to be solid in your foundation back at home first before you start going out, because shooting destination weddings can actually not be as profitable as shooting weddings at home. So 2012, we did 7 weddings. 2013, 25 weddings. 2014, we did 43 weddings. 2015, we started our associate program. We shot our first destination wedding. We did 70 weddings that year. And I did about 40. My associate photographer at the time did about 30 of them, okay? After that, 2016, we did 105 weddings. At that time, we had 3 associate shooters. This year, we have 135 weddings on the books for this year. Next year, I'm looking to scale it back, okay? It's a lot of work, right? I wanna make sure that I'm giving my clients the proper attention. But I still personally shoot 50 to 60 weddings per year, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I do like shooting a lot myself because it keeps me fresh. I like seeing new things. I like taking pictures, and I love the challenge of photographing a wedding, as many of you guys do. I think you have to have that mentality if you wanna become a wedding photographer. You have to love challenges. You have to love solving problems, because you're gonna deal with those every single day, right? You guys have probably met photographers who said, I just can't shoot a wedding. I don't know how you do it, right? A lot of you guys have met those photographers. They're out there, and there's a reason for that. They don't have that personality that's required to do this, and it's not a bad thing. It's just not in their blood, right? For you guys who are passionate about doing this, you guys will succeed at it as long as you put 100% of your effort into it. Okay, so we talked about this a second ago. Give me a couple more, guys. What are some of your challenges that you're facing? Because we got a couple new people here now. What are the challenges you guys are facing in your business?
The light conditions.
The light conditions, right? Absolutely, 100%. We talked about that a second ago. You're gonna be in a bad situation 90% of the day, right? The lighting's not good. The clients, you walked into the getting ready room and it looked like a bomb hit it, and the bridesmaids have all their stuff all over the place, even though they promised you they would keep it clean, right? But that's part of the wedding day, so you have to deal with that. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can deal with that, how we can hide some distractions using light and shadow, and how we can also help to ensure that the day is going smooth, right? Anybody else?
Well, mine's more in business, like how to book more.
How to book more, right? So I'll talk about this in a minute, but your portfolio is the greatest asset that you have in your business, okay? And the reasoning for that is because they're comparing your portfolio with 50 to 60 other photographers, right? Websites like The Knot, websites like Wedding Wire, referrals, all of these things come into play. You have to be in front of them, obviously, but you also have to make sure that your images stand out, and they stop and they say, wow, when we have a new client come into our office and I ask them, hey, what about our work connected with you, right? The first thing that they say to me is we looked through a lot of portfolios and yours was just different. It was just unique. It stood out among the pack. And I've experienced that myself. When we were hiring Studio 23 photographers, we reviewed over 300 portfolios. 300, right? I felt like I was looking at the same photographer over and over again. It might be something to do with me being in LA. Everybody shoots with a 50 millimeter at 1.2 backlit, right? So when I saw something that was different, it stood out to me, okay? And that'll depend on your market, right? You have to do something different. I'm not saying go against the pack, right? Stick within your style of photography. I was in Rome a couple of weeks ago, and I was taking a tour of the Vatican, and there's a really good story that the tour guide had told us, right? Michelangelo, Raphael, they're great Renaissance artists, okay? And they were both commissioned at the same time to do work within the Vatican. Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel, okay? He kept the doors locked, all right? He didn't let anybody inside. Him and Raphael were rivals, okay? And they were rival artists. They were competitors, essentially like we have today in our market, right? One night when Michelangelo went home, Raphael broke into the Sistine Chapel. He opened the doors, he looked up at the ceiling, and he was completely in awe of the work. Have you guys been there and seen it? It's absolutely incredible, right? It's hard to imagine that somebody painted that on a ceiling at the time, given what they had. Raphael's style had forever changed after that. His paintings changed, and you could see it in the Vatican. You could see the style that he that he painted in. He wasn't taking pictures back then. You could see the style that he painted in. It was completely different. But historians now consider him, whereas before he was number one in his style of photography, now they consider him number two in that style of photography. So stick within your own style of photography and progress at it and become really, really good. It's just a good story that I heard from them, and I do find it relevant in what we do. Okay, does that make sense? Some of you guys? Cool, awesome. Okay, cool. So let's go over our philosophy for a second, right? And this is what drives us as wedding photographers. It drives our business. It influences our success, okay? We want to create impactful images through storytelling and art. They have to go hand in hand, okay? You can take a beautiful photo of somebody, but if you forget the rest of the important pictures on the wedding day, then you're not gonna have happy clients. Again, weddings are about moments, right? The artwork that you see, in the big dramatic photos we do, that's only one piece of the puzzle. The rest of the wedding, you have to make sure you're shooting through the moments, capturing everything, telling the story so that you can lay that out in an album. That will affect your sales, right? When I talk about sales and business, guys, it has to be a win-win for your clients and for you, right? You have to give them amazing quality work. In exchange, they will pay you a high commission for your work. Okay, we use creative lighting to create unique images. Okay, we use a lot of off-camera flash. It's been the foundation of my style since day one. I've loved the way it works. I use a lot of natural light too. I use both of them. I mix and match them. I can honestly say whatever light is better at the moment in my own perception, my own vision. That's what I'm using, right? So I don't consider myself an off-camera flash photographer. I don't consider myself a natural light photographer. I'm just a photographer who uses light, and I encourage all of you guys to be the same way as well too. Focusing on the client experience. This is key. When you guys get to 100 weddings a year, you can imagine that there's going to be some hiccups in your business, right? If I said that we were perfect 100% of the time, I would be lying to you. And anybody who tells you that they've never had an upset client is probably lying to you as well too, if they're doing good volume. When you're shooting 10, 11 weddings a year, you can focus on every single individual client, right? But as your work gets better, obviously more people are going to want to hire you. And you're gonna run into some issues, okay? So the most important thing throughout the entire process is to keep their experience very, very good. If you guys have ever dealt with an upset or an unreasonable client, it doesn't matter, if their concerns are legitimate or not, right? It doesn't matter if you're in the right or you're in the wrong. You have to make sure that their experience, their lasting experience when they leave with you is good, okay? And also on the day of, the experience that you guys give them will influence the perception of your photographs. You might have a wedding where you kicked ass, you thought it was great, right? And you did a great job with light, shadow, whatever, but you took 20 minutes to set up each shot, right? And ultimately that influences or impacts the client experience. And you'll notice that maybe they're not so happy with the pictures, okay? On the other side, if you're funny, you're energetic, you're matching your client's energy and you're connecting with them left and right on every moment of the wedding day, you'll notice that they're gonna be much more receptive to the photos that they get. And also just naturally, because you're doing that with them, you're gonna take better pictures and capture more natural emotion. So focus on their experience. And that really should be the number one thing under our philosophy. It really is the first thing that we work for. But
what if the wedding planner gets them?
Okay. Every wedding, right? Yeah. So we'll talk about that at the end. I'll ask you guys if you have any questions, and then we can go ahead and go over some of these things that you might be facing in your business. Okay? Because it happens to me all the time. I know. Trust me. Okay, this one's really important, guys. You're shooting for the final product, not for digital, right? Not for digital files. We made this change within 6 months of starting our business. We used to shoot and burn or shoot and sell a digital file disc, and we still give clients digital files. I'm not saying that we don't do that. We absolutely do. But we shoot for the final product, right? We don't edit images the way that you see in our portfolio for digital. We never have. And the reasoning for that is because obviously, if you're giving digital files as a final product, they're going to expect every digital file to look like that, okay? And that's not realistic. Nobody can do that for them, right? Shoot for the final product, and you guys will find clients who appreciate what you do. They appreciate the artwork and the time it takes to go into making these things. They don't know the difference, right? They see photos on the website. They don't know how much knowledge, training, experience, and then post-production that you had to put into that final image. They just see the photo, and in their mind, if the digital file is the product, they are expecting you to deliver a set of files that looks 100% like that, and it's obviously not realistic, right? Okay, so let's define impact for a second, okay, because this is what we're trying to leave our clients with. In the dictionary, impact is defined as having a strong effect on someone or something, okay? In words, impact is defined as leaving a lasting impression on somebody, okay? That means when they see your images for the first time, it has to make them stop in their tracks. You only get one chance to make a first impression. You guys have heard that, no doubt, before, right? So when they're going through the portfolio, that is the first impression. The first 8 to 10 images in your portfolio is their impression of your business and your work, right? Obviously, the other things are gonna make a difference in whether or not they book you, but this is the first thing that they're gonna see, right? So you have to make sure that the images that you're showing them are fresh, unique, the ideas are good. And for photographers, that might be different than it is for clients, right? Because you and I, we are looking online, we're seeing techniques over and over again. You guys might see a certain type of picture that's overdone in our minds, right? But for clients, it might be fresh. But eventually, over time, clients will kind of catch on to that as well too, and it will become boring and mundane to them, and you have to change your style when that happens, okay? What I've noticed over the last few years is that off-camera flash by itself, clients didn't really know the difference between if it was used well or used not, if there was a proper balance between ambient light and flash, if the light was spilling. They didn't really notice. They just noticed that those type of images look different, right? So back a few years ago, maybe that would have been something that they might have called you for. But nowadays, it's become, because it's so easy now to get into using flash with TTL and all the modifiers that are available, a lot of photographers have done it, right? So this style of photography, just being a strobist or using off-camera flash, is not good enough right now to stand out among a crowd of photographers. You have to use it correctly, and you have to use it and make it look different. That's a key element to making sure that you're going to be successful. Now, you have to utilize concepts and emotion in your imagery. Any image that shows emotion or helps to tell that story will automatically leave impact on the clients. Maybe it's good impact, maybe it's bad impact. Who in here participates in the print competitions at WPBI? Anybody? Okay, so there was and I apologize because I don't know the artist's name, but it was an incredible image that won the Grand Award, right? And I believe it was a woman who was she was pregnant and she was leaning over a soldier's coffin. It was draped with an American flag. Incredible image, and that image won the Grand Award because it left impact, right? It had an amazing story attached to it. Okay, so those are the type of things that will drive home impact in your skill set with your clients. You have to make sure you're capturing those important moments. If there's tears, you need to capture it, right? If there's laughs, you need to capture it. If there's moments that between people that haven't seen each other for a while, you have to capture all that. All of it's very, very important in the final, in their final opinion of whether or not you did a good job on their wedding. And as wedding photographers, we're storytellers, right? So it is our job to tell those stories for them. That means that you have to constantly be shooting, constantly be observant throughout the day, and you can't slack off, not even for a minute. Like if you lose attention for a second, you're missing something that may be going on, right? And then ultimately that's going to affect the ability or the job you did on their wedding. All make sense? Cool, cool. Okay, so I want to talk real quick about our gear, and as you guys see, this is like the first image that we're popping up on the screen. I'm going to talk to you guys when I pass through these about how these images were created, so you guys can kind of like get a sense or a, create a picture of how we did this in your own mind if you were interested in that, right? This particular image was shot on a rooftop. Behind the bride in the original photo, there was a building. Okay, so it was the sun was setting right where the building was, and we didn't anticipate that when we planned the shoot. So we wanted to swap the sky out. That was something that we knew we were going to do, right? We took a Canon Speedlight and we put it in front of the bride on the opposite side of her. Okay, we put a Magmod CTO gel on that Speedlight to help mimic the light color coming from the sun. Okay, when we took the picture, I made sure to leave enough detail in the shadows because we did not have a light on the front of her, but I knew I wanted this to be kind of backlit, okay? And it took a couple of times to make sure that we got this image right. We had to slow down the shutter speed to get a little bit of blur in the veil, and I'll talk to you guys about how we create these images in a little bit, but then we also wanted to make sure that the wind was pushing it in the right direction so that we can create these leading lines directly up into the subject. And this is a shot that we do quite often, and I'll walk you guys through this in a little bit. These are the lenses and the cameras and the lighting that we use right here. Just talk to you about it real quick. 5D Mark IV, this is the current camera that we use. It's my most favorite camera that Canon has. I've used all of them. I absolutely love this camera. I think for a wedding photographer, this camera gives you the best balance of all of the things that we need. We need a camera that has good autofocus. We need one that focuses quickly. We need one that is gonna have good dynamic range. and we need something that's going to be reliable. Really important. 2 cards, extremely important. Okay. Our lenses, the 11-24. I use this lens religiously every single time I go out on a shoot. I'm using this lens. If you see our wide images, this is likely what it was taken with, right? If you guys aren't using this, a 16-35 is a great option, and I use that lens for years as well too. The 24-70, if I had to shoot a wedding with one lens, this would be it. It's pretty much the all-around lens that I can basically get any part of the day with. Jen uses this more often than I do because she steals it from me, and she's the wife. I have to do what she says, right? The 7200, this is a great lens for portraits. It's a great lens for ceremonies. It is a little bit heavier, right? So I try to use it as little as I can. But truthfully, when I'm out there on location, this lens will be able to give me different looks in my photography because I can change focal lengths quickly and orientation. So you can take the same scene and essentially create 6 to 8 different pictures within a short period of time with it. And that's the reason I love that lens as well. My 35, 50, 85 are some of my favorite lenses. They're specialty lenses, because they don't zoom, obviously, but the quality of images is incredible. And I haven't updated this gear list for a little bit, but the 135 is another lens that I have now as well too. And I've owned that lens 3 times. Every time I try to sell it, I have to buy it again. It's the most incredible lens that Canon makes. I absolutely love it. I shoot portraits with a macro, and I also shoot details with it as well too. Portraits, when you're shooting with a macro, you can take beautiful headshots with it. If you're doing tight crops on the face, it's a very good lens for that as well too. So don't use your macro just for details. Try experimenting with it. Shoot some portraits with it as well too. And you guys, I promise you'll love the results that you're getting. In terms of our lighting, we use the Canon 600EX RT lights. I love these ever since they came out. Who here was using pocket wizards and all sorts of radio transmitters before back in the day, right? I say Phil, back in the day, technology progresses really quickly. Back in the day, it was only a couple years ago. Ever since these came out, I've been using them. I love them. They're very reliable. That's the key thing right here, right? I did not bring these on my recent trip to Italy, and if you guys follow me on Facebook, you know I ran into a little bit of a problem with forgetting a battery charger, right? AA batteries are easy to find anywhere, so I wish I would have brought them because I would have had the lighting when I absolutely needed it, okay? They also recycle quickly, and they're very good for reception lighting, which is where we use them the most. I use the Profoto mono lights whenever I need some more light to overpower the sun. In terms of accessories, the MagMod system. You guys have MagMod in here? Okay, if you guys don't have it, go buy one before you leave B&H today. Okay, if you're using Speedlights, you're gonna love them, I promise. It just makes modifying your flash so easy. The whole system is incredible. The Omega reflector, this is a great reflector. If you guys aren't using this right now, it's basically a reflector with a panel that you can take off in the center of it, okay? And I love the product because it allows for some beautiful headshots. If you put that in front of your subject with the light source behind them, whether it's a Speedlight or the sun, it creates beautiful light that fills their face, fills all the shadows underneath, and creates gorgeous catch lights that are ring-shaped in their eyes, kind of like a ring light in a way. We use the Profoto off-camera flash system to modify our Profoto lights, and the Manfrotto travel stands. Now, the Manfrotto travel stands I do like. They're the nano stands. Have you guys used them before? Okay, they're like this big, and they fit inside a suitcase. If you guys are traveling or even going to shoot a wedding, you can hold 2 of them easily. I put them in the front pouch of my roller, and I could walk around with them. I'm all about, freeing up as many hands as I can. The think tank is the airport security is the bag that I use right now. I love it. It's been very rugged, very good. I couldn't bring it with me. I actually broke it this time. It fell down and I broke the handle, but they have a lifetime warranty, so they are going to fix it for us, hopefully. The Lexar professional cards are the cards that I use and I trust. Now, as of last week, apparently Lexar is not making cards anymore. Hopefully that stops. But SanDisk is a good one as well. This is important to list because I want you guys to understand that as wedding photographers, what you're capturing is like mission critical. You cannot lose data here, right? So you have to make sure, number one, that your camera writes to 2 cards. That's really important. I like CF cards better than SD cards because they are more rugged. I've broken SD cards before. And you have to have cards that are reliable. Has anybody in here had a card failure before? Okay, one person in the back, right? Eric. Card failure can be devastating, right? Especially if you don't have a backup in there. Imagine losing your client's images on an important event like a wedding, right? Terrible. You don't ever want to do that, okay? All right, real important, guys. Don't let your gear limit you. 1 to 2 Speedlights and just about any camera, any lens combination can create great pictures, right? You guys can make beautiful photos with your iPhone, okay? I promise that you guys can. You just have to understand the basic principles, again, of what makes an impactful image, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So don't feel like you have to buy the best of everything at first, but when you can afford it, invest in higher quality stuff, and that's important. I want to touch on that real quick. Lately, especially in the last 6 months, there's been a massive move by people to buy cheaper quality lights. Some lights that have been reverse engineered. They've taken technology, they've reverse engineered it, and they've made their own brands, right? And I've tested these lights when I'm writing articles. I don't want to name names of brands here, but you guys can do some research and find out what I'm talking about. And these lights have been very unreliable for me. I found out just out of the box a couple of times tripod mounts break, or the radio connectivity doesn't work, or the flash head's broken. There was one set of lights I had to return 4 times to get one that worked just to test it, right? So just keep that in mind, guys. What you don't want, and if you can save money on gear, great. I think it's a good idea once it's reliable. If you're shooting a wedding, again, mission critical, right? You don't have any time or you can't afford any mistakes in your gear or any missteps, because again, the more time you're fiddling with your gear, the less time you're connecting with your clients, right? Okay, so impact is going to influence your success, guys, definitely. I'm going to put all these up here. In Los Angeles, there's over 3,000 professional photographers, and this is just according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, right? This doesn't include the people who are accountants who shoot weddings on the weekends, and there's a lot more of those, right? This is going to impact you guys in your own market, the amount of people per capita that are photographers, because obviously, if somebody can get something for cheaper, they're going to do that, right? They're not going to go to you if you're not giving them something completely different. They don't care how much money you invested in your skill set, how much money you spent on your equipment, how expensive your computer is. None of that matters to them. What matters is what you're going to give them, right? Final images and also the experience. Those are two things that you cannot afford to skimp out on, right? So you have to make sure that you're setting yourself apart from everybody else. It's not your personality. I want to touch on that real quick, right? Because again, in my market, a lot of photographers shoot the same, right? Their mentality is, hey, my personality is going to set me apart. That's all good, but if they never call you because your starting price is too high, your personality is not going to be what they hire you for. Obviously, this doesn't mean be an a-hole, sorry guys, be an a-hole to all of your clients, right? It means that you have to make sure that you're showing them good stuff and a good experience, and then let your personality be that final determining factor as to what they hire you for, right? Your portfolio is the greatest asset that you guys have in your business. This has been my number one strategy for success in my business since day one, right? I will invest in my portfolio. I will spend a lot of money to make sure that these shoots come out really good. And don't feel bad about it, right? Don't feel bad about setting up stylized shoots for your portfolio, okay? You have real weddings to show your clients. You have real weddings on your website, and they can go and they can see that, right? But when Guess is modeling some clothes, right? They hire models, they set up a shoot, they invest money in it, right? Don't feel bad about doing the same thing. Every business in the world does it. Show your clients real weddings, obviously. Show them stylized shoots so that you can showcase your work and what your skill set is able to do. Okay, hang on. All right, so let me talk about this image for a second. We shot this at an LA venue. It's a very popular venue in LA. It's a very expensive venue in LA. But here's the thing, right? Because it was my second time shooting here and my first time recently, I wanted to create an image for this couple that would be different, unique, and would look completely different than what anybody else is showing when they click and they search for this venue, right? In the SEO of this, on our back end of our website, we put a lot of tags that would lead anybody searching for this particular venue to lead back to this picture. Very important, because what do people do? They Google Hummingbird Nest Ranch photos, right? They click the images tab in Google, okay? Your image has to stand out. If it looks like every single photo that's been done here in this exact spot 1,000,000 times over, they're just gonna pass by it, right? You want them to stop in that photo, click on it, go in and see who the photographer was, and then see the rest of your work, right? Every image in your portfolio has to wow them, okay? Because they may not be looking for a photographer at the time that they see this, but eventually they will be, and you want them to come back to you, right? To create this image, guys, we took it was gloomy outside, really cloudy, and it was kind of a bummer for these clients because they wanted sunset pictures. We took a flash just like we did with the bride on top of the roof, put it on the opposite side of the couple. We used it at full power to create these shadows on the ground leading back into them, and also on the wall from the gate itself, okay? It's a technique we use a lot, and it's something that can actually help with the composition of your photo as well, too. we shot this in London. That veil in the lavender field became the world's biggest bee catcher in the world, right? So the model here, again, we were in London last year shooting this. We went out to this lavender field. She did not care about bees at all. These were not normal bees. These were the Godzilla of bees. They were like the size of walnuts with wings. And they were flying around. So basically she walks in there, she's like, I don't care about this at all. She's like, they won't bother you if you don't bother them. And I'm like, I'm the one holding the veil. I'm bothering them right now, right? So I'm gonna stay back here. So typically to get these shots, the way that we do this is I'll get down really low, right? I'll hold the veil with my left hand. I'll take the camera with my right hand, and then I'll have an assistant, or in this case, my wife, hold the veil on the other side of me so we can create that triangle shape, right? So originally when we were taking this picture, I'm holding it and I have my camera up to my eye, and the bottom of the veil keeps flapping underneath the left side, right? And I'm like, Jen, get it up, Jen. I turn around, Jen's like on the other side of the lavender field because of all the bees, right? She didn't want to get close to them. So I had to beg her to come over and, buy her a purse or something afterward to make up for it. So this image, guys, was retouched by our editors, Evolve. I don't have any employees anymore. Evolve is handling a lot of our production. If you guys are at the point right now where you need to outsource some of that stuff, great company to work with, okay? This is an image that we shot in Paris. Again, we invested in our portfolio. We brought the wedding dress with us. I was telling Eric a story about this a few minutes ago. When we went to the Eiffel Tower the day before, we were only in Paris for 2 days. When we got to the Eiffel Tower the day before, it was a zoo. And this was my first time in Paris. I didn't know any better, right? So when we got there were people everywhere. We could not get the photo that I wanted to get. I mean, there was just no way to do it. No retoucher in the world could make that look good, right? So what we did is the next morning, I begged my wife to get up early, put on the wedding dress, just so we can have pictures at the Eiffel Tower, okay? So when we got there, it was like 6 a.m. She got up early to do her hair and makeup. It started raining immediately as soon as we got there. As you can see, the bottom of the dress looks heavy because it's wet, right? And there was a tour guide right behind us. I had to beg people to get out of the way to get the shot. But to shoot this, guys, there was a light on the right side of her in an umbrella. And then what we did is we made sure that the ambient light was exposed properly. So whenever you guys are using flash, turn the flash off, take a shot in live view mode, using your ambient light, make sure that the exposure looks good and that you're underneath your sync speed, and then add your flash in. That's the quickest way to get to the shot, in my opinion, right? You can use TTL too, but if you're using manual flash, that works really well for me. If you guys are using the new 5D, it's got dual pixel autofocus. I shoot in live view a lot now, probably 50% of the time, because I want to see what that final image is going to look like. It helps me to see it in the back of the camera. I do use a light meter if I need to get the shot really, really quick and I don't have time to mess with it, right? But more oftentimes, I'm just using the back of my camera to gauge the light, okay? And I'm not saying that's the correct way to do it, right? Whatever works for you is the way to do it, but this is just the way that I do it. And using a light meter on a reception, for instance, I will do that, right? Because sometimes we have 5 seconds to set everything up and I have to dial everything quickly. I don't have time to mess with it. But when we're out there on location, we got time, typically I won't use a light meter. Cool. This is an image that we shot in Italy 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is natural light. We went there at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So I learned from Paris that in order to get incredible pictures, you have to go early, okay? It's key, especially in these places that are going to be, very, very well-known landmarks, right? Again, with this particular photo, we paid the model, we paid for the groom, we bought the wedding dress, we brought all this stuff with us, and this was supposed to be vacation, right? But we were there, so I wanted to make sure that we got photos at least in front of the Colosseum. Again, invest in your portfolio, really, really important. This was in front of the Vatican, right? This image we shot, there was a light coming from camera left. We took 2 photos, one of them with the assistant in there holding the light because you couldn't put lights on the floor at the Vatican with the stand. The other one was without the assistant in it. We combined the 2 images, our editors did, in post-production to create this final picture, right? How many photos do you think your brides and grooms in New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles have seen of a couple in front of the Vatican? Not many, right? It stops them in their tracks. And this is why we do this, because I wanted to stop them in their tracks. Every bride in my market has seen pictures of a bride and a groom at the Walt Disney Concert Hall. If you guys have never been there, there's a picture right on that screen that keeps flashing up every couple of minutes at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, right? Even they have it here. So every bride and groom has seen that already. And it's an incredible place. If you guys are from New York, if you're from Philadelphia and you go to LA, schedule a shoot with the bride and groom at the Walt Disney Concert Hall, right? But in my market, they're numb to that, right? So I want to show them things that are completely different and unique, again, to stop them and become that conversation starter, whether it's at a bridal show, whether it is in front of me at a consultation, but it's going to give me a talking point to showcase what we can do that's a little bit different. And then this image was shot on location in Carmel. We're driving back to the hotel. I told the couple, hey, stop for a second, right? We had this beautiful sunset, got out of the car. We did the shot in about 30 seconds, right? We had to do it quickly because the sun was setting right there.
How's your front light?
There is a light, my assistant's holding a light right here. And she's holding the light on the subjects. And we took 2 pictures, one with her, one without her, combined them together, post-production. This photo was shot at San Francisco City Hall. You guys have ever been there before? It's a zoo, okay? At the top of those stairs, there are weddings every 15 minutes. This was the hardest photo that I've ever had to take because it took the longest to create. We were sitting there waiting for openings to shoot and then combine things together in post-production to make sure that we can get the shot without any people in it, right? This is not really a location that you can get to and avoid crowds. It doesn't matter what time you go. There's always people there. To shoot this, we had my wife. She's standing in front of, I believe it was the bride, crouching down really low, holding that light. It's on stairs, so it wouldn't fit on a stand. But she's standing there holding the light, and what we wanted to do was obviously illuminate them, but we wanted to create these lines leading up into them. That was important because it created these leading lines going back into the subjects, right? So we use shadows a lot of times to help with our composition. And then this was the first destination wedding that we ever photographed in Italy, right? So we got lucky on our first one, happened to be there. We're shooting this out in sun. And what happened here was the day of the wedding, they planned this wedding 7,000 miles away, right? The day of the wedding, it was the most massive rainstorm Lake Como had in 5 years. Go figure, right? So what they did was the next day we went back there, they gave us 10 minutes to shoot in this location, all right? And this is something I offer my clients and I suggest you guys do as well too. Day after shoots, right? This will help you to create better images. And there was somebody here a second ago that talked about the timeline on the wedding day, right? I believe it was you, right? This is one thing you can do to ensure you get pictures, right? Obviously, do the best you can because you want photos at their wedding venue. You have to create great photos for them on the day of the actual wedding as well. But this is something you can do to help, extend that timeline for you, get you the ability to create amazing photos and slow things down. All right, so let's talk for a second about investing in your portfolio. Really important. I know I've been hammering you guys on this, but I think it's important for you. Destination portfolio shoots are a great way to build your portfolio because again, they offer something unique and different for your clients that your competitors are likely not doing, at least not at this point. At some point, they probably will, right? So we're gonna have to innovate again at that point. Logistics and planning, crucial for success, right? You guys saw the photo on the rooftop that I showed you. We weren't prepared for the building that was going to be behind the bride. You guys saw the photo where I didn't have my flash over at the Coliseum. These are all logistical failures, right? We learn from our mistakes, and next time we're gonna work to make sure that we don't make them again. All right, you have to plan ahead of time because things might not go as expected, right? Maybe a backup model because models flake, right? This is why I recommend guys to pay your models. I don't recommend trying to get trade for TFP models, and the reason for that is because if it's free, they don't have any incentive to show up, right? Maybe they want photos, but if you pay them, they're more than likely going to show up. I mean, I haven't had any problems since we started doing that. Okay, destination shoots also offer an incredibly unique opportunity for your clients. Tomorrow, we're having a client that we photographed in Los Angeles meet us here in New York to do their bridal session here after the wedding, right? So every time that we have travel coming up, I add a day to our calendar and I send out an email blast to all of our clients telling them where we're gonna be and when. If they wanna meet us there, they can do that, right? They can use those photos in their album. I have no problem doing that for them, but more often than not, they want the digital files and they're willing to buy them, okay? So that's just something that we do. We're gonna be here anyway, right? Use them as social media content that can be posted throughout the year. So those photos that we did in Italy, right? Those are some of the bigger dramatic photos that we did, but there were a lot of other pictures that didn't go through a lot of post-production, right? They were just, they were more technically sound in camera. They were very beautiful locations, good light. Those are the photos that we're gonna use to create social media content for the entire year, right? I try to post to social media 4 to 5 times a day. I'm obviously not always able to do that, but I use a tool called Buffer that helps me schedule my social media posts at the beginning of the week. It works great. If you guys aren't using it right now, definitely recommend it, right? Start off with once a day, move to twice a day. Just keep staying in front of your clients. The way that Instagram is right now, and they're starting to use an algorithm to suppress the things that you post, but right now they still show a lot better than Facebook does, right? So make sure that you're posting to Instagram often so that potential clients can see you. In their minds, if you're not on social media, if you're not active, your company's not active, you don't exist. Keep that in mind, okay? I know some people here are probably shying away from social media. It's not time to shy away from social media. To be successful nowadays, that's where your clients are gonna be. You guys wanna be there as well too, right? Packing light, crucial when traveling, right? You're not gonna be able to bring huge lights with you. You're not gonna be able to bring huge modifiers with you, okay? So you have to pack light. This is why I love Speedlites and small lights, because they allow you guys to travel very, very well when you are shooting destinations. All right, so going through the elements of an impactful image, right? There's 4 of them that I like to talk about here. The uniqueness, right? That's the first thing that people see. Okay, is it something that's bold and fresh? Is it different? Is it something that is going to get them off their seat, stop and stop scrolling through the Instagram feed and move on to the next photographer? That's the first thing, okay? Being different and unique is the first thing that you guys have to focus on. Next, the lighting, right? The lighting in an image has to draw the viewer into the subjects. Okay? The subject might not always be the people. Most of the time it is, right? But sometimes it isn't. You have to use light and shadow, not just light. So it's important to know you want to use light and shadow to direct the viewer's attention exactly where you want it to go. The composition, the frames, the leading lines, they need to direct the viewer, again, back to the subject, just like the lighting is. And those things will typically go hand in hand. And finally, the connection or the moment, right? Your emotion sells your photograph as believable, okay? If there is a photo in an incredible location and one of these things are missing, okay, and that's why location's not listed here, if one of those things are missing, you're not gonna have an impactful image. It has to have all 3 of them to leave a lasting impression. The moment, very important, right? But obviously, the uniqueness and the freshness of the photo is gonna be the most important thing for you too. Any questions about this, guys? Cool. All right, so let's talk about the moment or the connection for a minute, okay? So moment during the first look, all right? I love doing the first look because it always leads to moments like this. And I show this photo to brides and grooms who are considering not doing a first look. Obviously, we know as photographers, it helps with our timeline, right? It makes the day go a lot smoother when they do it, okay? Because then you can do family pictures, everything beforehand, okay? But when I show them an image like this, I always tell them, guys, if you don't do a first look, you're not gonna have a lot of time or alone together. You're gonna be going through the motions, and then he's gonna be standing up on the altar watching you walk down the aisle with 200 people in front of him. He can't act like he really wants to act at that point, right? He has to suppress his emotion. If you want him to show his emotion, you gotta do it when you guys are alone together. And I love this image because of that, because it really does show the emotion that he's feeling when he sees her right here. Incredibly important photograph, right? These 2 people passed away not too long after this photo, okay? And to a client, this is the crux of what we do, guys. As wedding photographers, we're there to document moments. It is very important what we do. My mom just sent me a picture of my great-grandpa. I'd never seen him before, right? She found a photo today, sent it to me, and I thought it was an impactful image to me, right, of a subject that was important. Every client has their story. Every client has people that are important to them. You as a wedding photographer aren't gonna know them off the top of your head, right? You're gonna get to the wedding, but it's your job to find out. You could do that through questionnaires beforehand. You could do that through observation on the actual day of the wedding. So important to capture these moments and capture these important people right here. They didn't want to see each other beforehand, right? So they did this instead, okay? You guys have seen these images on Pinterest and they look cheesy 90% of the time, right? Okay, because we're not trying to make Pinteresty photos, right? We're trying to capture emotions in moments as they happen in real time. Key element to shooting weddings. A moment during the first dance. It's an unposed photojournalistic moment that happened when the couple was doing their first dance. What we're paying attention to here is I'm shooting on the correct side of them to make sure that the lighting is on their faces, right? That's number 1. When we're shooting for photojournalism and we're trying to capture moments, we don't have control over all of the elements, but what we do have control over is our camera angle and our shooting position. Sometimes over the lighting too, if you're using flash in a moment like this as well too. But we're making sure that we can see the crowd because that gives the story context. If there was just a foliage background behind them right now, it might not look like a photojournalistic moment, right? It might just look like it was something that we post. But when you see everybody happening behind them, you can see that some people aren't even looking at the couple. It's a real moment. It really did happen. It's genuine. The wedding is full of stuff like this. And when you guys go through my portfolio, if you have, you're going to see a lot of portraits on our website, because that's really what makes us different. But if you dig deeper into our website, which is what I encourage our clients to do, you'll see a lot of this stuff as well too. And it's important for me for them to see it. Again, she's walking down the aisle. In this particular instance, he did not want to turn around until she had reached all of the, it was a long walk from, where she was entering from to where all the guests were, right? He didn't want to turn around until she reached that particular area. We photographed the guy's wedding who is wiping his tears. He's actually roommates with the first groom that I showed you, right? So this is 3 weddings in this particular circle, because we focus on moments like this. It helps with your referrals as well too, okay? But we're sitting here, we're capturing this important moment as he's crying right before she walks down. I mean, you think that this photo is going to be important to the bride? Absolutely it is, right? Because it's a real moment. It's really what happened. It's part of their wedding day story. Let's talk about lighting for a second, right? Lighting is going to be your key element to your photograph. Without light, you don't have the foundation, right? You can have a beautiful moment. I love it, right? Even if there's bad lighting, you're still going to keep the photo, but it's not going to be as impactful as if the lighting was good. Okay, this particular portrait right here we shot in the street. We had a lot of cars. You can even see one there that I haven't edited out, but you do have a lot of cars behind them, but we had to create a good image, right? So I took the 135, I put it at f2, and I used the light in high-speed sync mode to blur out that background and still get our light on the subject. There's a big softbox lighting up the bride right here, and then another one lighting up the car as well on the other side. Okay, and it's giving us the ability to make them the brightest part of the image, lead the viewer's attention directly into the subjects.
Was that during the day?
Yeah, this is during the wedding day. This is right before, right when she was getting ready.
So there were strobes for photos?
Yeah, actually I'm not 100% sure which light I used. It was probably a Pro Photo on the left-hand side, right here, because we're using a softbox. Okay, this light right here was placed in front of the couple. And this is a technique that I use to change the color toning in the photograph, right? And what I do is I'll either put a gel on the flash or I'll leave it completely bare. But I'll set the white balance in my camera to tungsten, and it'll create this twilight kind of look. So story behind this image, we're at Griffith Park, and we're shooting these photos of them. And the second that I put my light stand on the ground, mind you, I've shot there 100 times, security was flanking me from both sides, right? Telling me we can't shoot there anymore with lights. And ultimately, we're at nighttime. They wanted a night shoot. There's nothing else I could have done in that case, right? So we went around the side off the property of Griffith Park, and we could still see the city lights in the background. And I climbed up not a tree, but it was like a little ridge to get this photo, right? Oftentimes, you have to do those things to get angles and create images that look different from your competitors. Really important. This is natural lighting. We shot this in our apartment in Paris. We're having an assistant on the right side hold the dress and throw it. And then my wife is standing at the top of the stairs right here. She's being lit by the chandelier. This image looked very much like this right out of camera. I think all we did was dodge and burn the gold leaves on the stairs a little bit, and we cropped it in to remove the assistant's hands as well too. Might have to throw it a few times to get that shot. We have a speed light behind the couple right here, lighting them up. And again, it's coming from the same direction as the natural light on the day. Again, when you guys are using speed lights, you want to make it look natural. Try and put it in the same direction that the sun is coming from. It's gonna help the image look a lot more believable. We underexpose the background. When you guys underexpose things, you're gonna actually create more saturated colors. Okay, so when you have more saturation in your sky, in your natural environment, it'll help you in that post-production process as well. Then we lift the shadows a little bit on the front of the couple because we didn't have a light on them as well. This couple came from China. These are pre-wedding photos that they do. Oftentimes they'll go to different locations and they schedule photo shoots, right? They were here for one day. We could not reschedule the shoot because of the rain, so we're shooting in the rain. Again, lights need to be weather sealed. Your camera needs to be weather sealed for situations like this as a wedding photographer that you're gonna find yourself in. This time we're shooting through a fountain. I'll show you guys how to create these images in a little bit. But basically, anytime you have a semi-transparent object, glass, water, bubbles, whatever it may be, right? If you guys put light on the opposite side of it, especially if it's colored, okay, it'll create this interesting pattern as the light hits that object and bounces around inside of it, okay? This works really well with beer bottles at receptions, works really well with water from waterfalls. We've actually done this same type of shot and the one that you saw prior to this before with a hose. So we've taken a hose outside and we've sprayed it behind the couple, we put a light behind that and it looked like they were outside in the rain. Something cool trick that you guys can have in your bag. This image, there's a strobe camera left right here, and we're using a beauty dish. Now, the way that we got this image to look like this, because there will be light spill when you're using a beauty dish, no matter what, right? Is when you're balancing your light, we balance the light with the ambient light with the flash to be almost an even ratio. But because our strobe is hitting her face first, the light fall off on the ground is going to be a lot darker. So when we get this into post-production, dodging and burning is really, really easy. Okay, we're setting ourselves up for success for the final image. Okay, and then for this image, we had a light outside of the window. It wasn't bright enough at that time of day to do this without it, right? So we had a light outside of the window. The inside of that room had a lot of orange lighting, okay? Orange and blue are complementary colors, right? So in order to get this image, we actually put the light outside, and then we used atmosphere aerosol. I can't talk today, okay? Have you guys ever used that before? Okay, it's like smoke in a can, and they may sell it here. So if you guys are leaving, add that to your list of things that you guys want to buy before you go, right? The downside of this is you can't take it on frickin' airplanes, okay? So when we travel, I can't use this, and I can't even teach with it typically. But we could ship it technically. It's like $10 a can, so they'll ship it directly to you. One of the things I love about this stuff is because, again, semi-transparent object, right? If you light it from behind, it will light up. Our light source is coming from behind the smoke, right? We sprayed the smoke in front, and then we lit it from behind, made sure that light hit the smoke, and it created it allowed the smoke to become visible on the camera screen. Then we added higher saturation in the blues to complement the natural orange that was in the scene already, and it helped us to create those complementary colors. Right here, anticipation. Right? Yeah. So what we could do, and what we do oftentimes, is we'll go through a variety of different expressions. And you can find the one that works best for you and for your client as well. This is the one she chose for her album. So go from there.
Flash gel, or is that just...
No, it's just white. Yeah, it's standard flash. You could gel it blue, but I didn't want to contaminate her face with funky colors, right? All right, let's talk about composition for a second here. Same bride. She had this beautiful dress. It was like a triangular shape or heart-shaped train, and we wanted to showcase that. This is, again, a venue in Los Angeles that's really, really popular and a lot of people go to. And this is a shot that a lot of people do. But I wanted it to look different because we had this beautiful train. It allowed us to create a composition that was unique. I took my 1124. I was able to get wide. Right behind me is a banister, so it's really hard to, you can't really back up further than this, right? And there's also some stairs. But we centered up the composition. I got just wide enough to be able to get the shot and be able to straighten it in post-production, because for whatever reason, after 6 years, I still can't shoot straight, right? And then again here, when we're posing her, we want to shift her weight to one side, and we offset the shoulders a little bit and offset the arms a little bit to make sure that the posing fundamentals are still good. Again, composition here, this was shot in Rome. I did not expect to shoot here when we went to this location, but it ended up being one of my favorite places to shoot. And one of the reasons why the composition works here, she's framed in between the arches. You have the arches on the left side leading to her, the arches on the little rooftop looking things right there on the right side leading into her. And then we're using the veil, or the cape in this case, as a triangular pattern leading up to her face, right? So again, composition, incredibly important to creating an impactful image. I grew up going to this church, and I didn't realize that it looked like this until I went back there to photograph a wedding, right? There were some beautiful triangles to be found here, and we incorporated them into the final product with the client. Right after the ceremony, we took her outside and did this. This is an image we created about 1.5 years ago. Again, this is the first type of image like this that we did. We're using the veil to lead into her, right? So again, I talked to you about how to do this a little bit ago. You have one person holding the veil on the right side, you're holding the veil with the left side, and you're using your right hand to hold the camera. And then you get your shutter speed down to like a 50th or a 60th of a second, and you have them, the person on the right side, give the veil some motion, and it'll create that motion blur. It'll kind of make it look silky smooth. Even if the veil is a little bit wrinkly, it'll help to actually smooth it out if you shoot it at a slow shutter speed. We shot at this location because the top of the bridge right there, very, very busy. See the arches right there? Carefully positioning the subjects within the arches to make sure that they're not going through their faces, okay? Again, compositionally, we want to make sure that the image looks good. Again, with the veil and the dress, we have the arches framing her. The dress is leading up into her face. This dress manufacturer is a very, very big dress manufacturer. They're called Galia Lahab, and I apologize if I didn't say that right. They shared this on their Instagram page. They have over 2 million followers, I think. So you can imagine that's really good as, for a business to have that kind of exposure out there if a company like this is sharing your photos. Now, just so you guys know, right? I always, on our wedding questionnaire, I ask our bride where she bought her gown, what brand it was, and all of the other vendors' information. Therefore, on our social media page, if there's something that I think is relevant to those people, we will tag them and we will send them the photograph right away, right? They will more than likely share it, and again, they're getting your name out there, right? Again, that first step is to make sure people know you exist, right? And once you do that, then they can be impressed by your portfolio. So if I'm leaning down, right? If I'm down here, like getting this type of shot, right? I'll always have the bride lean in toward me, just a little bit to correct the perspective, right? The non-vertical lines in the background, it doesn't bother me. That's an architectural thing, right? But for me, as a portrait photographer, it's never bothered me. It actually fits within my style of photography, as long as it's not too much. If it gets to be like the building's almost horizontal, obviously I want to correct that, right? But for me, it doesn't bother so much, but when the subject is distorted, that does bother me, right? So in order to correct that, we have them lean back into the camera. Does that make sense? Sorry, into the camera, so toward, yeah. Cool. No problem. Okay, so this image right here was shot in St. Louis. Again, the leading line from the arch leading into the couple right there. We wanted to make sure that they became the subjects. The triangular pattern created from the dress, really important. And then I wanted to make sure that it was kind of a fashion-esque image, right? But I still wanted to have them kind of connected or together. We brought her forward because she's the main subject of this image, right? I usually tell the groom he's just a prop of the photos, right? I joke around with him. He likes that anyway, because a lot of times they don't like to be the main subject. Not all the time, but sometimes. This is shot with natural light. I believe I shot this with a 2470. And you guys will see this type of lighting at overpasses all the time, right? So any normal overpass, and I don't know where you guys live, but many of you guys probably live in an area where there's freeway overpasses, and you can get this type of light there whenever the sun is at a different angle than noon, right? So if you're at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, sun's kind of sideways in the sky, it's gonna create this kind of a pattern on any wall that's behind an overpass. The way that we got the light on her and not on him is we brought her forward a few inches. If you look at the light on the ground, right, from the sun, that's where the light pattern was. If you tell your bride, hey, stand where the sun is, or stand until you can see the sun, right, the light will be on their face, okay? Then we put him back, obviously, into the light because the light was falling on that part of the wall, and we mirrored the triangle from the composition with her dress as well, too. And then, we juxtaposed it together. We put them opposite to create this contrast in the image. It just looked good in my eye at the time. Let's talk about overcoming challenges on the wedding day, okay? We went over this briefly. You guys are gonna run into these scenarios over and over and over again on the wedding day where it seems like you're in the worst case scenario and there's nothing you can do. And I promise you guys, if you have simple tools in your bag like Speedlites, okay, anything that looks distracting in a room can be hid with shadow, right? You can get soft light even when you don't have modifiers. And I'm gonna show you how we did that in a second. Your light's gonna determine where you place your subject in the scene, all right? So if you have an area that's good lighting, that has good lighting on it, and you can hide all of the distractions in shadow, you can definitely go ahead and do that, right? It's gonna give you guys the ability to do that, but make sure you're using light and shadow to direct the subject's attention where you want it to go. I'm sorry, the viewer's attention where you want it to go. Consider your light position, the relationship of the light on the subject to the background, the color of the light, all of the characteristics of it. And what I mean by that is the hard light versus soft light, right? How do you choose the correct modifier? And usually I try to match the environment that I'm in. If I'm indoors, soft light usually works best, right? If I'm out in the sun, I might use a hard light source. It just depends on what the final look that we're trying to achieve is gonna be. And then it's strength in relationship to your ambient light, right? If there's a lot of contrast in your scene, you might not use your off-camera flash as a main light. You might use it as a kicker or a fill. Does that make sense? Awesome. So have you guys ever walked into a getting ready room and it looked like this? Yeah, right? It's like every weekend. So we send out a timeline prep questionnaire, and we tell the bride, hey, make sure the room's clean. We recommend getting a separate one for your bridesmaids. And very rarely they do that. Most of the time, it looks like this. This might be a little bit of an extreme example, right? Because you couldn't really clean anything here. If you look right behind where I was, and I know I didn't take a picture of that, right behind where I was standing, there was a bunch of bridesmaids, about 10 of them, right? You could even see the look on this bridesmaid's face when she walked in that getting ready room. She was like, what are we gonna do here, right? Right behind her, church lady, right? Church lady says, hey, you guys have 10 minutes before the bride has to walk, right? And I needed some photos for the prep. So what we did, if you guys see this closet on the right side of the screen right there, right? That closet opened up and closed, and there was a mirror on it as well. So we took a Speedlight, put it in the closet right here, and we bounced the light off of the white wall that was in the closet. By closing that door, you can control the spill of the light on the background and on the rest of the subjects in the scene, okay? Yeah, it's like barn doors, exactly. So we're using a small Speedlight to create soft light. This is our final image right here. So we're using shadow to hide the distracting parts of the image, converted it to black and white just to get rid of all of the color spill that was coming off the wood and stuff in the room. Okay, and then we created a little bit of motion on the veil to make it almost mimic like a window was opening and the veil was blowing in the wind, right? So on the wedding day, these are the situations that you guys will find yourself in all the time. Bouncing flash is one of my favorite techniques. You guys can do that anywhere. One of the techniques I really love to do is if I have a bride and there's a white wall, something like this, if it doesn't have glass on it, right? I might put a flash behind the subject, right? And I might be shooting over here, but I point that flash at the wall. And if you turn her face into it, it'll create nice soft light on the face coming from highlight to shadow. It's a really good technique to create a quick portrait in a pinch that almost mimics just beautiful window light. And you can take a Speedlight and create a huge, huge softbox by doing that, right? It's almost like we do in receptions where we bounce our lights off the ceiling. This is the end of the wedding right here. We're using one image to close out the album, so I have to make it a full spread, right? We have the candles right there, but the candles weren't putting out enough light to light the subject's faces. So we took a small video light, put it behind the candles, okay, and that video light will actually be used to illuminate our subjects, but it looks believable because it's the same color as the light coming from the candles themselves. This is the final image that we're creating. So we're using the reflection on the bottom, right, to lead into them. We're using the candles also to lead into the subjects as well. This image becomes the final image in their album. It's a little more romantic, a little bit more, I guess you would say, close up, a little bit less environmental, but it worked for them. Lighting rings, right? Oftentimes, the first thing we shoot when we get to the wedding is the rings. We always tell the bride to have all the rings present with her. Guys' rings, girls' rings, everything, right? So what we did here is we took two ice lights, put them on each side, and we put the ring on a reflective surface. There's two things that I like to find for rings. I like reflective surfaces and I like sparkly backgrounds, right? Those are two things. So I have glitter paper that I use, but I often don't pull it out because there's usually something there that I can use as a background. Shoes are a really good thing to use, right? We use some sparkly pine cones behind them to create the background of this image and use the macro lens to get in really, really close. And this is our final ring shot right here. You can experiment with different type of lighting, but oftentimes if Jennifer's shooting the guys and I'm photographing the girls, I don't have somebody else there to hold the light, so I try to find a place to lay them flat. I like the ice lights really for ring lights or close portraits. Anything else, I don't really use them for that often. Reflective surfaces. This is one of my favorite things to look for on the wedding day to find good light, right? So oftentimes, if you guys can find a colored wall that's a warmer tone, or if it's white, right, it'll make a really, really good surface if the sun is hitting it to use as a light source on your subjects. So Jennifer's using that light right now to light the details, but I brought the bride outside after she got dressed to get a couple of quick close-up portraits of her. What you guys can't see is it's a really small hallway leading out of there, and there's only a very, very small patch of the area that's in shade. This is the light that we have on her face, and this is almost right out of camera right here. There's a little bit of contrast added. But you can see if you're finding good light, remember, the images, the digital files that we give to our clients, they are just color corrected. They're not fully edited, right? So the lighting has to be good in camera because there's not going to be retouching that's going to be applied to those files that we give to them, and I don't want them sharing images that don't look good online, right? So let's talk a little bit about lighting styles and types right here, okay? This one right here, there's a backlight behind them with the grid on it to kind of control a little bit of that light spill. We didn't get all of it off the ground, but I did want to illuminate them. Now, one thing that's important to know, when you guys are backlighting your subjects, okay, that hair on the bride all has to be on her back. Okay, because if it's not, if you have hair coming in front on this side and you backlight it, it'll light it up. It'll create a really bad hot spot underneath her chin. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're using backlight. I'll talk about that, I think, when I get to the backlight here. So short light. This is the light we use the majority of the time. It's when the light source is on the opposite side of the subject's nose in relationship to the camera. All right? So I have these lights right here. Let's imagine this is my key light right here, and the camera's coming from this direction, right? If I point my face this way, right, it's on the opposite side of my nose in relationship to the camera. That's how you determine short light. You'll see highlight to shadow transition, and the reason why they call it short light is because it's lighting the shortest part of the face in relationship to the camera. Does that make sense? Okay. Short light's going to emphasize shape, texture, dimension. That's a good thing most of the time, but it's not always a good thing. If somebody doesn't have great skin, short light's going to make that accentuated, right? Okay, and ultimately, they don't care if you made dimension on them if their skin doesn't look good, right? So if the person has bad skin, you want to put a little bit less contrast in the face, and you can use that. You can use a fill flash to do that, or use beauty lighting, which we'll talk about in a minute. We're using a gold reflector to mirror the gold tones in her dress right here, and it's coming on the left side. So you see the sun on the right on her hair and on her temple right here, right? That's from the sun. The left side is the reflector coming back onto her face. Again, there's a reflector right here filling the light. The actual light source here is natural light, and it's coming from camera right up high from the sky, right? An open gray sky that day. We put a reflector underneath her in order to light up the shadows in her underneath her eyes, underneath her chin, and also bring that sparkle into her eyes. Okay. This right here was a ProPhoto B2. We used a beauty dish, camera right. Okay, and we were lighting our subjects with that light right outside of the camera right there. I'm sorry, right outside of the frame. This is our natural sunlight. We shot this with the original 1DX, one of my favorite cameras Canon had ever made. Really, really liked that camera. Then it got stolen with all my other gear one day. Terrible day for me.
You call it police?
Yeah, I did. They didn't do anything. So again, we put them in the sun. We wanted to make sure that we were showcasing the texture on the wall, right? So we found a wall that was lit from the side by the sun, and we made sure we used that on their face as well too. Her body's turned slightly away from the light. I know it's hard to tell, but the right shoulder is slightly away from the light source, which causes that texture on the dress as well. And then her face is turned back into it. Okay, beauty lighting, right? I use this light as like getting ready shots. I use this light for the must-haves. I use it to light like children, you know, mother of the bride, mother of the groom, anybody who needs to look beautiful on the wedding day, right? We're gonna use this lighting. This light is very, very easily recognized by the small shadow that should be underneath the subject's nose. On the image on the left side right here, there's a gray sky outside, and we're using a silver reflector. Now, characteristics of your reflectors, right? If the reflector is silver, it's going to be specular, right? Which means it's going to light up some of the natural oils and stuff and makeup on someone's face. It's going to create those I guess the sparkle in their face and in their eyes, right? Which is why I like it for certain situations. But it does increase contrast, okay? And sometimes if you put that light underneath, it can overpower the actual source of light that's coming from above, right? So be careful with it. On the right side, this is the Omega reflector. So remember I told you guys a few minutes ago about how the Omega reflector can give you really beautiful light on the face? This is that type of shot that we're using here. Both of these are shot with the 85mm from Canon at 1.2. I shoot it wide open. It's tack sharp. I love that lens. It's one of my favorites. Broad lighting, okay? We use this lighting to create strong poses. So if we're not having our subject smile, which we do often, right? Or if we're shooting men a lot of times, it's going to create a more stronger look to the actual image, okay? Now you're going to turn your face away from the light source in order to get this type of look. This one right here, shot camera right is where the light is coming from, right? There's another one coming from camera left and camera right from behind as well. But those are the rim lights on the back of the face, the back of the head. The strong light is coming camera right in front of the subject. This was photographed in London. Again, the light source is coming from the same direction as the sun. We used our live view mode on our camera to underexpose our background by about 1/3 of a stop, right? We didn't want it to be completely black, right? We underexposed it just a little bit, then we bring our flash to light our subject up in the same exact direction from the sun to help create good light on them that actually looks like natural light. This is shot in a studio. We're using broad light on the subject right here. Again, a more fashion type image. This kind of lighting will work. I don't typically use it on everybody on the wedding day. It's very rare that I'll use this light on a bride. And then our kicker lights, right? So I use these a lot of times, especially with Speedlights. Speedlights are great for this type of light, right? If you're using kicker light or backlight, rim light, anything that creates separation from your subject in your background, very, very good to do. And Speedlights are great for that because you don't need lights that are super powerful for this, and it'll always allow you to give three-dimensionality to your images. So if we have a bride posing with short light on her face from the window, we might have a kicker light from behind lighting up her hair to separate it from the dark background. This right here is coming from behind. This is actually a full backlight, right? And what we did is we took a Canon Speedlight, we had a grid on it, put it from behind her. The light from the right side on her face is coming from the window, okay? And then the light coming from behind is coming from the Speedlight. We had her spray the perfume, turn her face slightly away from it, and then we're able to capture those water droplets in the sky. Remember I told you about semi-transparent objects, right? This is a perfect example of how we would go ahead and do that. Hairspray, I'm sure you guys have seen those photos. This is the type of technique that they're using. There's a backlight behind our subjects here, illuminating them. Obviously, not on the wedding day, right? We're not getting our brides in the water. Imagine the hate I'm going to get online for showing this picture. But yeah, we're using a light behind her to separate her from the background, right? In this particular case. So we have two Canon Speedlights behind the guys right here. We actually used 2 CTO gels, camera left, right? We didn't use an orange gel and a blue gel, just because I didn't have a blue gel with me, right? So the way that we got this image, we used 2 orange gels on one side. We set our camera's white balance to tungsten, which turned the natural light coming from the ungelled right flash to blue. And then we turn the power up on that flash to compensate for the gels that are on the left side. So when you guys put a gel over your flash, you're gonna sacrifice some power, right? So that power on that flash has to be turned up higher than the flash that's on the right-hand side, okay? We shot this 3 or 4 times. Half of that smoke isn't actually smoke, it's actually their breath because it was like 10 degrees outside, right? My fingers were not working after this wedding. I was shooting it in this California boy. They take me up to the snow. That's what happens, right? Okay, quick posing tips, right? Because this is essential for creating impact in your photos. You want to make sure that your posing is on point. If your posing doesn't look good, they're never going to like the way they look, right? This is the first lesson that I learned in photography. So posing females, typically these are, and again, all of these rules are made to be broken. As you guys know, once you understand the rules, you can break them whenever you want to, but generally, okay? I'm going to turn our female's body away from the light. I'm going to turn her face back into it. I want to shift her weight away from the camera, generally, okay? But I do that by actually having her point her toe at me, bend it, and then lean forward just a little bit, right? Keeping all the weight on her back foot. Next thing that we're gonna do, I wanna make sure that her shoulders are offset, okay? With women, we don't want flat shoulders across, right? We wanna have them one way or the other. It looks more feminine, okay? When I do it, it doesn't look so feminine, but when they do it, it looks feminine. It looks better, okay? Then we're gonna lean the face back into the light, and that helps to make the face the brightest part of the picture. Remember how I told you guys, we want your subject to be the brightest part of the photo. If you have somebody turn, let's just say this is my light source where you guys are, right? And I have them turn this way, what's the brightest part of what's the part of the body that's the closest to the light right now? The shoulder, right? So if I lean them into the camera, it becomes the face, okay? And it also will make this area look smaller, right? And that's generally what we wanna do. Always show the thinnest part of the waist, and I say this because I was actually taught this by a florist, not a photographer, right? She had her bouquet right here, and it was covering the waist. Okay, she's like, hey, bring the bouquet down a little bit, and you could see the waistline. And then I'm like, hey, that makes a lot of sense, right? Then I noticed in my posing, I was actually posing brides like this a lot, right? Hand on the hip, covering the thinnest part of the waist. So instead we moved that down, and we could see that area right there as well. Other thing is, if you're posing her like this, you want to see a little bit of space in the arm right here, because if you keep it right here, it makes her look wider, okay? And again, these are principles. They're general principles that you guys, when you understand them and you understand what a properly posed photograph looks like, it can adjust your composition when you guys are shooting even unposed moments. Okay. Also, one of the things that I do want to touch on that I forgot to touch on earlier when I was talking about digital files, throughout the years, by selling clients prints rather than digital files, because you know the business model that has been popular for the last few years, people will take digital files, okay, and they will send them off to the client, and then they will pray that the client texts them back and says, I love them, right? Not a good model to have, because you don't know what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. You know how I figured out what works and what doesn't in my business? What my clients are buying, okay? What images they're putting up on their wall. Certain clients don't like images where they're not smiling at the camera. They have a certain look to them, and I've learned what that client looks like, what those images look like, okay? And it's helped me to adjust my posing and my sales process. So I can honestly say that my posing principles started as a foundation, learning from other photographers, but they were refined by seeing what my clients have purchased throughout the years. And it's really important. I believe that having that type of business model actually helps you as a photographer because you know what they like and what they don't like. And remember, ultimately, you're shooting for them, okay? You don't want to be a rock star in the photography community. You want to be a rock star and a celebrity with your clients. That's the most important thing that I have to say all day today. Trust me on that. All right, so an example of posing females, space in between the arms, shoulders are offset, body's away from the light, face is back into it, and she's leaned in toward the camera, right? Then we're using the composition here from the veil, again, leading back into the subject. Just lighting, just so you guys understand, there was a light on the left side coming into the subject, and then we had a light on the right side lighting up the veil a little bit as well. Again, same posing principle, very similar pose, different environment, right? You have a studio portrait, something a little more traditional before. This one is going to be a little bit more unique, a little bit more impactful. They got that car, right? We want to take a picture of it. You know that thing wasn't cheap to have there that day. Okay, another one right here, strobe in the same direction as the sun to help mimic the natural light that was already there. If I would have lit her just with the sunlight, okay, we would have had a situation where she's as bright as the background, right? And even the highlights in the clouds might have been a little bit brighter than her. So by using the strobe, even though it's in the same direction of the sun, okay, it allows us to make her the brightest part of the photo. And in general, shooting from above is a better angle on everybody. It doesn't matter if you're skinny, thin, whatever, right? And the principles will all be the same, right? No matter who our clients are, our job is to make them look their absolute best on the wedding day, okay? Now, what I do is I will figure out what their insecurities are. Because even thin women, in fact, the prettiest women, a lot of times have insecurities, right? They do, and a lot of times we have to manage those. So when they say, and you would pick those up by when they say things like, I hate my hair like this, or this is my side, right? Just so you guys know, the side is usually the opposite side where the part in their hair is, right? Just general rule of thumb, okay? Not always the case, so don't assume, but ask them, right? So you manage their insecurities, and then when you find out what those are, you do your best to minimize them, okay? So if a woman is like, hey, I really hate my arms, okay? So what we'll do is we'll find a doorway to put her behind, right? Maybe we'll hide her behind him, or we might have him in front with his hands in his pockets, with her like this with her arm on top of him, right? There's ways to do it. Now, ultimately, you can't, in a situation like that, you can't walk around posing her behind him in every single picture, okay? You have to use other principles, like keeping the arms, away from the body, things like that to help minimize it, right? Don't try to change who people are, and don't try to shoot a different way just because they're insecure about something, right? Because that's gonna throw you off of your own game, okay? Do what you do, just keep in mind what their insecurities are and try to shoot appropriately for that. And it always helps, like, you can ask them. Don't feel shy about asking them, because they'll happily tell you. They want to look good in their pictures. They're investing a lot of money to look good in their photos, right? So you want to make sure that you give them that good experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Cool. All right, posing males, okay? You have a lot less things to worry about when you're posing a guy, right? When you're posing a female, like, anything could be an insecurity, right? Like the hips, the arms, the chin, right? Whatever it may be, right? Most of the time they look amazing, especially on the wedding day, right? They always look beautiful, and then they're always worried about the way that they look, right? And it doesn't drive you guys crazy when you see when you have a client, you take beautiful photos of them, and then they're like, oh, I hate the way I look right there, right?
Yeah.
You get that all the time. It happens, okay? And they're not gonna like every single picture, but you want them to like the majority of them, right? And you do that by being conscious. Now with guys, a couple things that guys don't like, right? They don't like their bellies in pictures, okay? okay? They don't like their hairline. You have to be conscious where you crop a close picture of a guy, right? A guy like me with a huge forehead right here, right? You want to crop it closer to my eyebrows, not way up here, because it makes it look like my forehead goes on forever, right? But with men, you want to make sure you crop close, usually on the right above the eyebrows, or show the entire head. The double chin, okay? One of the things that we look for, it's like the first thing I look for head to toe before I push the shutter button is, the chin, right? I always want to look at the guy and the girl and make sure that we don't have a double chin. You can avoid that a couple of ways, right? You can have them push their face forward toward the camera like this to define their jawline. You can have them just naturally, if you have them lean into the camera, that also helps because it brings the jaw underneath. But also just make sure, guys, because that is, again, the first thing that they're going to look for as well in their picture. And if they have a double chin or anything that resembles a double chin, because even the skinniest people, guys, if you do this, you're going to have a double chin. I'm sure that looked good on the camera right here. You're going to have a double chin, right? No matter what. So you have to, as a photographer, you have to be conscious of that when you're posing them. And then for guys, the belly too, it's another thing, right? So with guys, one way to make them look good is if you take their body right here, you turn it slightly away from the camera, and then you bring your shoulders back in, right? Ultimately, what that does is it allows the shoulders to look larger, more broad, and it makes the waistline look smaller, gives them that V shape, right, that they want, right? These are little things that help make a big difference in the final product that you're giving to them, right? So once you guys kind of master these rules, right, you can break them when necessary in order to create better pictures for people. Okay, shooting again, camera left is the light right here. It's just natural light coming in the window. We always want to give the hands something to do, all right? So with guys, I like to button the jacket. I might have him adjust the cufflinks. In fact, I do all these things, and I do them in motion too. So I might have him stand here, and I might say to him, okay, look out the window right here. I'm gonna have you go ahead and button your jacket. He's buttoning his jacket, I'm shooting. Go ahead and adjust your cufflinks. He's adjusting his cufflinks. Fix your bow tie, fixes his bow tie, and at this time, I'm zooming in tight. I'm getting a wider shot. I'm shooting a whole bunch of different images as he's in motion. Putting someone in natural motion like this will ease them a lot, and it'll make them feel a lot more comfortable so they're not so static, right? Because you guys can tell when somebody's static and stiff, right? Especially in the hands. The hands are the dead giveaway when somebody is stiff and static. And sometimes you'll be like, relax, relax, relax. If they don't relax, I'll walk up to their hands and I will shake them out until there's no more tension in them. And I say, that's how we want your hands to be posed, right? So these are little things. Again, it's not a full-on posing class, but I'm just giving you guys a couple of tips on how we pose our subjects. Okay, so let's go into creative lighting techniques using small lights. Again, as I told you guys before, I'm finding myself using smaller and smaller light sources as I progress in my career. I don't want to carry so much stuff. I know I'm only 31 right now, but again, when I'm 60, I don't want to have a whole bunch of back problems, right? So I'm trying to carry as little as possible as I can. All right, so plate shots real quick. Okay, so real quick, when we take a small light, generally that light is not going to have as much power as a big strobe, correct? That's not going to mean though that you can't take beautiful pictures with it, all right? You just might need to use an additional technique in post-production to remove that light. And instead of trying to clone it out or paint it out, that takes forever, right? We'll just take a plate shot. And the way that we'll do that is we want to match our ambient exposures on the two pictures. So it's generally a pretty simple process. I might get down low into my composition with my subjects, and I'll have a conversation with them before. I'll say, hey guys, we're going to take a photo of you guys real quick, okay, with the light, and then I'm going to ask you guys to leave the scene, and I'm going to take another picture without the light, right, and without you guys in it, okay? And then from there, it's real easy to combine them in Photoshop. I'll show you guys how to do it in a second. So basically, what we're going to do, no tripod, right? We get down low. You have to make sure that the time that you take your plate shot and the time that you actually take your main shot is quickly right after each other, right? And the reason for that is because if you move a little bit, right, in your frame becomes skewed, and then it's harder to line up in Photoshop. Okay, Photoshop's got a really good technique to automatically align these layers in post-production. So this is the original image right here. We're shooting in Dominican Republic. The sky was ridiculous colors that day. This is out of camera JPEG, and we're lighting them from up top. Okay, Jennifer's holding the light. You can see we're doing video. This was the hardest wedding we've ever photographed. It was video and photography, and there were only two of us because they added video the day before the wedding, so we couldn't fly another person out there with us. So she's getting a workout there, holding the lights. Obviously, we can't hold anything super heavy because we were traveling light that day. And then the next image, Okay, saturate the colors a little bit, crop it, but the only way we can remove her from post-production here is by using that plate shot without her in it. It's the only way we can get it. In this particular instance, I did not have the couple move, and the reason for that is because getting them back up there, if I needed to redo it, would have been a headache. But if it's simple, if it's a simple picture, I'll ask them to leave too, just so that we can line them up correctly. Okay, I'm going to talk real quick before I get into this about how to line those up. In Photoshop, right, the way that you would do this, in Lightroom first, you're going to go ahead and sync the two settings that you use on the final edit. All right, sync the two settings, and then you're going to right-click them, and you're going to click in Lightroom, Load as Layers in Photoshop, okay? Then when you get them into Photoshop, under Edit, there is first you're going to select all the layers. Under Edit, there is a setting for align layers, right? You align the layers, you put a mask on the top layer, and you just paint out the light stand or whatever, the people, whatever's in the photo that's bothering you. It's real simple, real quick, and easy to do.
Can you do that with blending modes?
I haven't done it with blending modes. I do it with just a normal blending mode. I add a mask and I just paint it out real quick. It's real easy. It takes like 10 seconds to do. And we only do this type of photo, right, on the big images, the one that's going to be like the cover of their album, or the large one that goes on their wall. We're not going to do this for every picture because that's a lot of post-production for me to deal with in getting their gallery ready for them to see. Bringing out reflections, okay? In order to get an image like this on any reflective surface, all we have to do is we have to make sure that the light that's falling on the subject is greater than the ambient light that's falling on the reflective surface. So we use this often with flash, video light. So I'm going to grab a drink real quick. Flash, video light, or any type of lighting that we can actually illuminate our subjects with. Now, this particular image was a painting, right? And the painting had a glass covering over it, all right? And what we did was I had the bride stand, there's a door right to her right side, so there was natural light already falling on her, okay? And that wasn't falling on the window. We took an ice light, or maybe it was a speed light, I'm not 100% sure, it was a little while back, and we brought it right outside the window, and we brought it to a really low power, but just stronger than what the ambient light was falling on her, Then we lit her and made sure none of that light fell on the reflection, okay? By placing her in the correct composition, this is the type of image that you can get. Now, you can also do this with windows outside. It's just a lot harder to do that, right? And the way you would do that is by going outside the window, okay? You'll have, let's say, a reflection of the beach or something, okay? You can underexpose that in your camera and then add a flash on your subject, and then you'll be able to create this with just a window from outside. So it works with any type of reflection, not just pictures and mirrors, okay? You guys have questions about this? Nope. Right? Another way that we did this same exact thing, we put a light right on her face. Rotolight is a video light, but we brought it with us this day, and it's literally inches away from her face right there, right out of the frame. But it created a little portrait of her that showcased like the anticipation that she was feeling right before the actual ceremony. This was our first destination wedding again, the same one that we shot in Italy. They had this Italian Renaissance style painting. We wanted to show that. So what we did is we took a light, we put it on her with a grid, and there were lights over the picture that were lighting the photo on the very top. Okay, so it allowed us to, because if you guys can see, there was natural light falling off right here on the bottom. Now, you guys can do the same thing. If there's a picture that you guys love and you want to showcase that as part of this picture, as part of your final frame, you guys can take a flash and with a grid on it, and you can illuminate that particular area of the picture, and a snoot will work as well too. And then you can use a light on the subject. Just make sure that that light's powered up a little bit higher than the light that's going to be falling on the top. Otherwise, that becomes the brightest part of your photo. So we're going to talk for a second about hiding distracting elements. Now, this happens a lot in getting ready rooms. This happens a lot in reception halls. And we use this technique to get a couple of portraits of the subject that we intend to use for their wedding album without all the junk in the photo, right? And of course, we take photos where those things are present, right? But if we can, we want to hide them as well as we can, right? So this technique can be done wrong, right? It can definitely be done wrong. And if you do it wrong, what it looks like is those point and shoot cameras that you put your finger over the lens, right? Or with your cell phone, right? You don't want it to look like that. So you have to do it right. You have to use the object that you're shooting through to frame your subject and make sure that the light falling on that object actually adds to the scene and doesn't take away from it. So you want to minimize the distracting elements. You don't want to add to them, right? If you use a semi-translucent object, glass or water, you're going to get that effect that I showed you guys earlier with the light bouncing all around inside of it. And the light on your subject definitely has to be the same as the light that's on your object as well too. If you have like let's say you're shooting through some flowers, right? The flowers are in sun, but your subject is in shade. Okay, that's not going to work because the flowers are going to be lit too bright to compete with the subject. So this is an example of what I'm talking about right here. I'm shooting through two glass soap dispensers, I guess. This kind of stuff you could find in any type of hotel. I use hairspray bottles to do this a lot of times too. I close the windows right there and open just a sliver of light to fall on the actual soap dispensers. I also open the light on the subject. You can't see it, it's off camera, right? But we open the light on the subject to make sure that she had the same light falling on her that we have on the soap dispensers. This is the final product that we're getting. The blue light is coming from the window light, right? So we're saturating the blue, and then the orange is the natural light that's found on the natural coloring that's found on the object that we were shooting through. This is a first dance. It's a reception. Behind that champagne glass that I'm shooting through is a DJ and ugly speakers and all sorts of other uplighting and crazy stuff, right? So we're just taking one quick picture. They have a flash that's bouncing off the tent. Off camera, it's bouncing off the tent to create soft light on the entire room. And then there's another light in the corner that's pointing back toward, it's one of the DJ's lights, pointing back toward the champagne glass, which is causing this effect. If there's no light falling on that champagne glass, this looks like a smudge on your camera lens, okay? Shooting through the champagne glasses and the wine glasses right here, using it to frame our subjects, making sure that we are we're lighting them properly. So basically, to get this shot, and this is how I light reception. So I'll talk about that in a second here as well too. I'll use a flash camera left, camera right, and I'll have a flash on my camera that I use on and off as well too. I don't always use the flash that's on my camera. Okay, sometimes I turn it off, especially for first dances like this. Now, when you turn off that flash that's on your camera, because it's designed to fill shadows, okay, it can create situations where you have bad contrast, right? So knowing when to use it and when not to use it is paramount for your reception lighting. In this particular instance, the light that's coming camera left, that's falling on their back, is also lighting the wine glasses in the foreground of the image, right? The light that's coming from camera right is actually lighting our subjects here. Those lights were not powerful enough to fill the entire room with light, right? Which is why in the background, you guys have the purple lighting, the uplighting that's found in the room. If your subjects, your clients are spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on uplighting, sometimes thousands of dollars on lighting, they want to see that, right? You don't want to just flush that out. And if we point a light at the ceiling and we just blast the entire room with light, you're going to lose some of that effect for them, right? It's going to fill the room with light, and it's going to overpower your uplighting, and that generally is going to be a bad thing for them when they invested all this money in the flash. The other thing, when you guys are using reception lights off camera like this, timing and your angle is absolutely critical, right? So if I have two lights in the corners of this room, and my subjects are turning, right? If I photograph them when their backs are to the lights, we're going to have shadows on their faces, right? So generally, I'll pick an angle where I can see their faces, and they're turned opened up to the light. Does that make sense? Do you guys struggle with reception lighting in here? You do? What are some of the challenges that you have with it? White balance? Okay, talk about that 1 second. How about you?
And sconces, wall sconces.
Okay, cool. So trying to avoid some of the distracting elements in the room, right? So if you guys are dealing with white balance issues, more often than not, that's because the color of light on your flash is not matching the color of the light that's in the room, right? So more receptions nowadays have the incandescent bulbs, right? They have like orange lighting in the room. So in order to avoid getting mixed lighting, you're just gonna put the same color light that's in the room on your flash, right? So you basically are gonna gel your flashes to match whatever the strongest source of ambient light in the room is. And I say strongest source because early in the night, typically the strongest source of light is actually going to be the light coming in from the windows, right? To fill up the room. That's going to be daylight. And if you guys are shooting toward the end of the night, it's usually going to be the ambient light caused in the room itself, right? From the lights that they have there. So we'll gel those lights to match them. And if you guys like the orange lights in the background, you could gel your flash with a half CTO, or even a quarter CTO gel, and you'll leave some of that orange in there when you get into post-production and do some correction on it. Does that all make sense? Any other challenges with reception lighting?
The teacher.
Hang on 1 second. What's that?
The mirrors. Sometimes the walls has mirrors.
The walls has what?
Mirrors.
Mirror.
Oh, mirrors. Yeah, mirrors can be a pain. So you know how we deal with that? We'll actually shoot on the opposite side of the mirrors, right? If you're shooting flash into the mirror, it's gonna hit the mirror and it's gonna reflect off and go in a bunch of different ways, right? I try to avoid that. If the room is like 4 walls of mirrors, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna wanna grid your flashes, point them right on the center of the dance floor, and then shoot a light in the ceiling, okay? What was your question?
TJ lighting. All different
Yeah, okay. So laser lights, right? What is up with that? Is this a trend in wedding photography if you're a DJ now? Like your clients are like, hey, I want laser lights on my dance floor. So what we do with that is laser lights are like any other ambient light source, right? They're a little bit brighter, right? So what you have to do is when you're exposing the natural light in your scene, you have to underexpose to get rid of those laser lights and use the flash on your subject to fill in where that light source is. Does that make sense? Yeah, it'll help a little bit. It's not going to get rid of it completely, but it will help.
So if you're shooting at the like a reception space that's like fairly like wide, like do you try to bring your light stands closer to the dance floor? But
Yeah.
like how do you work around that?
So
Sometimes-
the way that I do it, right, the way that I light is typically I'm gonna put my light stands on the corners of the dance floors for the events that there are not a lot of people walking around. So typically this is like first dance, speeches, parent dances, right? My lights will usually be in the corners of the room, not in the corners of the room, the corners of the dance floor closer to the subjects to increase the efficiency of my light source, right? And also get rid of some of the spill. When the dancing starts and people are drunk and they're acting crazy, the last thing that you guys want, right? You guys laugh because it happens every wedding, right? Every single wedding, there's some drunk person that will trip over your lights and cause a lawsuit for you, right? The way that you avoid this is by you putting those lights into the corners of the room on a higher power setting and gridding them. Because even if you put a grid on the light, you know, you're still, if the power's high enough and the light's far enough away, you're really gonna be focusing it just on the dance floor, okay? Use your zoom, use your grid in order to make sure that light's not spilling everywhere, okay?
You lose power with the grid. Right?
You do, yeah. You're gonna lose power with the grid, so you have to make sure that you're using a higher ISO in order to increase the efficiency from the lights. So typically for me, if I'm lighting it like that, my ISO is going to be 1600 to 2500. I will go up to 10,000 ISO on the 5D Mark IV, right, and the 1DX Mark II, and it doesn't bother me. I get good photos at 10,000 ISO. The picture I showed you guys, this one a couple slides back. This is shot at I think 10 or 12,000 ISO right here, and the image is clean. So thank God for good technology nowadays, right? So we're gonna have the lights in the corner of the room typically, and we're gonna focus them on the dance floor. You have to get them away because when guests start dancing, they're not paying attention to your lights. And I don't sandbag my lights when I have them in the corners of my room. And the reasoning for that is because if I have a sandbag and somebody kicks it, they're likely to trip over that sandbag, right? If I have a light stand, you know, like a nano stand, and somebody kicks that, they're gonna knock over the light stand. It's not gonna knock over them. So I typically don't. That's just the way I do it, and I know some people do it differently, but I haven't had any issues so far. Knock on wood, right?
Always put mine next to the DJ speaker.
Yeah, that's another good way to do it. Another good way, real quick, guys, one of the other ways that I will light my subjects is instead of having them cross dance floor like that, I will put them next to the DJ speakers, and I use the mag bounce on camera, and I'll shoot opposite into the lights. That creates a really beautiful off-camera light source for receptions. And I'll typically decide which one of those I'm gonna do, depending on the way that the space is laid out, right? So those are two lighting setups that are gonna guarantee you pretty good light. I'll teach you guys about speeches in a second, too.
I just wanted to ask, are you modifying the off-camera flashes here on the opposite corner?
No, usually they're just bare flash. Well, they will have gels on them typically. Now, if like I told, what was your name? I'm sorry.
Ryan.
Like I told Ryan, right? If it is the if it's the end of the reception and I'm using them as accent lights and my speed light's going to be my main light, right? Then I will put a grid on them because I don't want those lights to be focused all over the walls next to the corners of the room, right? Just to make it look good. Okay.
I have a wedding coming up, and it's on a deck overlooking, and it's outdoors.
Okay.
It's on a deck, it's in St. John, overlooking the water.
Okay.
Would you use that same kind of setup
You-
outside?
I will, yeah, because oftentimes I shoot outside. California weddings, a lot of times don't happen indoors. Almost the entire wedding sometimes is outside, right? So two lighting setups, the same ones I just talked about, will both work very well, right? If we are, and basically, I apologize for anybody because I'm forgetting to repeat the question here, right? And the question was basically, if we are outdoors, are we using the same lighting setup that we're using indoors? And the answer to that is yes, okay? Sometimes if we're outdoors though, and I'm bouncing light, because sometimes I will bounce light, instead of bouncing the light, I'll either use the mag bounce, right? Or I'll point the flash directly at them as long as I have accent lights in the corner as well too. Any other questions on reception lighting?
So are they all both at the same side? The two lights?
It-
You don't like put them.
So they're cross-lit for the majority of the time that I use them, right? Again, if I have a wide open space, I will cross-light our subjects. I'll have a flash. Let's say this is the dance floor. Flash is in the corner over here. Another one is going to be over here.
So they're like.
Yeah, they're cross-light, right? And then you choose your angles, okay, to make sure that you're getting the best possible light on your subjects at the time.
I thought they were like both on the same.
No. And you could do that as long as you have some action lights in the back. What I don't want, though, is if they're both on the same side and you're on the same side as well, okay, then they're going to be lighting up your background, okay? So when I talk about choosing angles, I'm talking about I want to shoot into the darker corners of the room, okay? So if I'm lighting cross-light like this, okay, I don't want to shoot from that direction because the wall is right behind me, right here, right? I want to shoot over here and shoot into the darker part of the room because then my subjects are going to be brighter than my background, and we're not going to have shadows and light spill. Now, the other case to that is when we do, as Doug suggested, and we take two flashes, we will put them on the same side of the room, right? And then we use a on-camera flash at our subjects if the space or the layout calls for that. If you're outdoors, sometimes that's a better option to use than cross-lighting because the contrast is going to be so great in an outdoor environment. Make sense? Cool. So speeches real quick. Let me talk about that for a minute, all right? When you guys are lighting speeches, the reason why I like having light stands, right, and light speed lights and things like that is because during a reception, things are happening and you're often having to reposition those lights. Now, one of the harder environments that we shoot in for receptions is when we're shooting speeches and the subject is standing next to our speaker is standing next to our bride and groom, right? And then there's a wall behind them. Because if you shoot from this direction, what you're going to end up getting is shadows on the wall. Because you can't use big softboxes to decrease the contrast on the wall. You have to use, bare flash or maybe a spear or something really, really light in order to make sure that you're mobile still, right? So one of the things that we'll do is we'll set up those speed lights, again, the same way. We might have one light on our bride and groom. We might have a backlight behind them in the corner, okay? And then the angles that we're typically picking to shoot are gonna be from the sides of the tables right here, right? Because from there, you can see the subject out of focus in the foreground, and the speaker is gonna be you can see your bride and groom out of focus, and your speaker is going to be your main subject, okay? And then you could bounce back. So our second shooter is usually on one side, and I'm usually on the other side. Right, and that's kind of how we'll go ahead and shoot speeches when we're faced with that situation. Now, if the speaker is giving a toast from the center of the room, the rules are a little bit different at that point, right? At that point, we'll have a gridded speed light on our speaker, we'll have another gridded speed light on our subjects, and then we're going to be shooting from the sides of the room into the dark corners of the dark areas of the room, and just highlighting and illuminating the rim of them because the grid is on them, right? That creates kind of a more, because here's the thing, right? When you're telling stories in photos, you have to tell the story that fits the mood of the environment and the photograph, right? Speeches are typically emotional. Okay, there's going to be stories, there's going to be laughter, there's going to be a lot of good things that happen during speeches. So oftentimes what we'll do is we want to accentuate that by creating a dark, more emotional, more moody photograph by just rim lighting the speaker, right? Then my second shooter during this type of lighting will actually have a on-camera flash, and they might use just a simple bounce flash to fill the room when they're capturing the reactions of our subjects, right? If our subjects are crying, again, same thing. We're shooting in the corners of the room with our off-camera flash in order to accentuate and capture those emotion, accentuate the mood of the photograph as well too. Any other questions?
So you do move your lights during reception. You're not one of those at this.
No, yeah. I move them all the time. I just finally got the cheetah stands. Have you guys used those real quick?
They arrived today.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't remember which ones they are, but I just got them for receptions, and I used them this last weekend, and I love them because I'm able to pick them up and move them around. Now, the cheetah stands or auto stands, something like that. Yeah, I just got them. I just used one wedding with them. I don't have a final verdict as to whether or not I like them yet, but I did definitely like what I was able to get with them that one particular day. Do you have a question? No? Any other questions on this? Cool. Thank you guys all so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.